So welcome back to As the Beverly Turns, the One Life in Graustark, this wonderful soap opera of a book that I am enjoying oh so much. And I'm enjoying it so much that I decided I was going to read another chapter in the same day that I read the last one, because I want to see what's going to happen now. I want to see if Baldos makes it out of the castle, if Beverly changes her mind, etc., and so on. So, yeah, we are going to jump back in and read another chapter of Beverly of Graustark by George Barr McCutcheon. And we are going to be reading chapter 24, which is titled Beneath the Ground. While Baldos was standing guard in the long, lofty hallway, the Iron Count was busy with the machinations which were calculated to result in a startling upheaval with the break of a new day. And I forgot to put on my glasses. I was like, why does everything look so squiggly? Getting older, it's such a fun thing. He prepared and swore to the charges preferred against Baldos. They were dispatched to the princess for her perusal in the morning. Then the Iron Count set about preparing the vilest accusations against Beverly Calhoun. In his own handwriting and over his own signature, he charged her with complicity in the betrayal of Graustark, influenced by the desires of the lover who masqueraded as her protégé. At some length he dwelt upon the well-laid plot of the spy and his accomplice. He told of their secret meetings, their outrages against the dignity of the court, and their unmistakable animosity towards Graustark. For each and every count in his vicious indictment against the girl, he professed to have absolute proof by means of more than one reputable witness. It was not the design of Marlanx to present this document to the princess and her cabinet. He knew full well that it would meet the fate it deserved. It was intended for the eyes of Beverly Calhoun alone. By means of the vile accusations, false though they were, he hoped to terrorize her into submission. He longed to possess this lithe, beautiful creature from over the sea. In all of his life, he had not hungered for anything as he now craved Beverly Calhoun. He saw that his position in the army was rendered insecure by the events of the last day. A bold, vicious stroke was his only means for securing the prize that he longed for more than he longed for honor and fame. Restless, enraged, consumed by jealousy and fear, the Count hung about the castle grounds long after he had drawn up the diabolical charges. He knew that Baldos was inside the castle and favored, while he, a noble of the realm, was relegated to ignominy and the promise of degradation. Encamped outside the city walls, the army was lying there without its leader. Each hour saw the numbers augmented by the arrival of reserves from the districts of the principality. His place was out there with his staff, but he could not drag himself away from the charmed circle in which his prey was asleep. Morose and grim, he anxiously paced to and fro in an obscure corner of the grounds. "What keeps the scoundrel?" he said to himself angrily. Soon enough, a villainous-looking man, dressed in the uniform of the guards, stealthily approached. "I missed him, General, but I'll get him the next time," growled the man. "Curse you for a fool," hissed Marlanx through his teeth. And then another hireling came up. "What have you got to say?" This man reported that Baldos had been seen on the balcony alone, evidently on watch. Marlanx ground his teeth, and his blood stormed through his reason. "The job must be done tonight. You have your instructions. Capture him if possible, but if necessary, kill him. You know your fate if you fail." Marlanx actually grinned at the thought of the punishment that he would mete out to these soldiers. "Now be off." Rashly, he made his way to the castle front. A bright moon cast its mellow glow over the mass of stone that was outlined against the western sky. For an hour he glowered in the shade of the trees, giving but slight heed to the guards who passed from time to time. His eyes never left the enchanted balcony. At last, he saw the man. Baldos came from his door at the end of the balcony, paced the full length in the moonlight, paused for a moment near Beverly Calhoun's window, and then disappeared through the same door that had afforded him egress. Inside the dark castle, at the end of the hall, melodiously boomed the hour of 2. Dead quiet followed the soft echoes of the gong. A tall figure stealthily opened the door to Yediv's chapel and stepped inside. There was a streak of moonlight through the clear window at the far end of the room. Baldos, his heart beating rapidly, stood still for a moment, awaiting the next move of the game. The ghostly figure of a woman suddenly stood in front of him in the path of a moonbeam, a hooded woman in dark robes. He stared as though confronted by the supernatural. "Come," was an agitated whisper, and he stepped to the side of the phantom. She turned, and the moon fell upon the face of Beverly Calhoun. "Don't speak. Follow me as quickly as you can." He reached out and grasped her arm, bringing her to a standstill. "I have changed my mind," he whispered in her ear. "Do you think I will run away and leave you to shoulder the blame for all this? On the balcony near your window an hour ago "It doesn't make any difference," she urged. "You have to go. I want you to go. If you knew just how I felt towards you, you would go without a murmur." "You mean that you hate me?" he said. "I wouldn't be so unkind as to say that," she fluttered. "I don't know who you are. Come, we can't delay a minute. I have a key to the gate at the other end of the passage, and I know where the secret panel is located. Hush, it doesn't matter where I got the key. See? See how easy it is?" He felt her tense fingers in the darkness searching for his. Their hands were icy cold when the clasp came. Together, they stood in a niche of the wall near the chancel rail. It was dark, and a cold draught of air blew across their faces. He could not see, but there was proof enough that she had opened the secret panel in the wall, and that the damp, chill air came from the underground passage that led to a point outside of the city. "You go first," she whispered. "I'm afraid. There's a lantern on the steps, and I have some matches. We'll light it as soon as— Oh, what is that?" "Don't be frightened," he told her. "I think it was a rat." "Oh, good gracious! I wouldn't go in there for all the world." "Do you mean to say that you intended to go?" "Why, certainly. Someone has to return the key to the outer gate. Oh, I suppose I'm going to have to go in. You will keep them away from me, won't you?" Baldos was smiling in the darkness. thinking what a dear, whimsical little thing she was. With my life.
"They're 10 times worse than lions," she told him.
"You must not forget, you're going to have to come back alone."
But I'll have the lantern going full blast,"
she said, and then she allowed him to lead her into the narrow passage. She closed the panel and then felt about with her foot until she found the lantern. In a moment they had a light.
"Now, don't you be afraid," she told him.
Baldos laughed in pure delight. She misunderstood his mirth and was conscious of a new and almost unendurable pain. But he was filled with exultation over the prospect of an escape. Somehow, Beverly felt an impulse to throw her arms around him and drag him back into the chapel in spite of the ghost of the game warden's daughter in her mind. "What is to prevent me from taking you with me?" he said, a mighty longing in his chest. Beverly laughed, but drew back.
And live it unhappily ever after? Oh, dear me, isn't this just funny? Just think of me, Beverly Calhoun, being mixed up in schemes and plots and intrigues and all of that. It just seems like a great big dream. And that reminds me, you will find a raincoat at the foot of the steps. I couldn't get other clothes for you, so you're going to have to wear your uniform. There's a stiff old hat of Mr. Laurie's also. You have no idea how difficult it is for a girl to get men's clothing. There doesn't seem to be any real excuse for it, you know. Goodness, it looks dark up there, doesn't it? I hate underground things. They're so damp and all that. How far is it, do you suppose, to the door in the wall?"
Beverly was chattering on, simply to keep her courage up and to make a fair show of composure. "It's a bit more than 300 yards, he told her. They were advancing through the low, narrow, stone-lined passage. Beverly steadfastly ignored the hand that he held back for support. It was not a pleasant place, this underground way to the outside world. The walls were damp and moldy. The odor of the rank earth assailed your nostrils. The air was cold and deathlike.
"How do you know that?"
she asked them. "I have gone through the passage before, Miss Calhoun." She stopped, like one paralyzed, eyes wide. "Franz was my guide from the outer gate into the chapel. It's easy enough to get outside the walls, but very hard to return."
You mean to say that you've been in and out by way of this passage? Then what was your object, sir?"
demanded Beverly. "My desire to communicate with friends who couldn't enter the city. Will it interest you if I say that the particular object of my concern was a young woman?" She gasped and was stubbornly silent for a long time. Bitter resentment filled her soul and bitter disappointment in this young man. "A young woman," he said, so insolently. There could only be one conclusion. The realization settled one point in Beverly's mind forever.
"It wouldn't interest me in the least. I don't even care who she was. Permit me to wish you much joy with her. Why don't you just go?"
Irritably, forgetting that it was she who delayed the progress. His smile was invisible in the blackness above the lantern. There were no more words spoken until after they had reached the little door in the wall. Here the passage was wider. There were casks and chests on the floor, evidently containing articles that required instant removal from Edelweiss in case of emergency.
"Who was the woman?"
she asked at last. The key to the door was in her nervous little hand. "One very near and dear to me, Miss Calhoun. That's all I can tell you at this time."
"Well, this is the only time you'll have the chance," she cried. "Here we part. Hush. I think I heard a step. Could somebody be following us?"
They stopped. They listened. It was as still as a tomb. "Must be the same old rat," he told her jokingly. But Beverly was too nervous for any pleasantries, and releasing her hold on his arm, said,
"Goodbye."
"Am I to go? Just like this? Have you no kind word for me? I love you more than my soul. It is nothing to you, I know, but I crave one forgiving word. It may be my last." He held her hand, and she didn't pull back. Her lips were trembling, but her eyes were brave. Suddenly, she sat down on one of the chests. If only he hadn't told her about the other woman.
"Forgive me instead, for all the trouble I brought you. It was all my fault. I'll never forget you or forgive myself. I'm going back to Washington immediately. I can't bear to stay here now. Goodbye. Bless you. Do you think we shall ever see each other again?"
Without thinking, she was clinging to his hand. There were tears in the gray eyes that looked pathetically up at his. She was very dear and enchanting down there in this gruesome passageway with the fitful rays of the lantern lighting her face. Only the strictest self-control kept Baldos from seizing her in his arms, for something told him that she would have surrendered. "This is the end, I fear," he said, with grim persistence. Beverly caught her breath and half sobbed. Then she rose resolutely, though her knees were trembling.
"Well then, goodbye,"
she said, quite steadily.
"You're free to go to where and whoever you want. Think of me once in a while, Baldos. Here's the key. Go, I can't stand it much longer."
Beverly was ready to break, and he saw it, but made no sign. Turning the key in the rusty lock, he cautiously opened the door. The moonlit world lay beyond. A warm, intoxicating breath of fresh air came into them. He suddenly stopped and kissed her hand. "Forgive me for having annoyed you with my poor love."
All right,"
she choked, and started to close the door. "Halt! You are our prisoner." The words rang out sharply in the silence of the night. Instinctively, Beverly made an attempt to close the door, but she was too late. Two burly, villainous-looking men, swords in hand, blocked the exit and advanced upon them. "Back! Get back!" shouted Baldos to Beverly. He drew his sword, and like a flash, Beverly picked up the lantern and sprang out of his way. Capture, or even worse, seemed certain, but her heart did not fail. "Put up your sword. You're under arrest," cried one of the men. He had heard enough of Baldos's skill with the sword to hope that the ruse might be successful, and that Baldos would surrender peaceably to numbers. The men's instructions were to take their quarry alive if possible. The reward for the man, alive, was far greater than that for him deceased. Baldos instantly recognized them as spies employed by Count Marlanx. They had been dogging his steps for days and even had tried to murder him. The desire for vengeance was working like a madness in his blood. He was overjoyed at having them at the point of his sword. Beverly's presence definitely meant that he would show them no mercy. "Arrest me, you cowardly curs," he said. "Never. With a spring to one side, he quickly overturned one of the casks, and pushing it in front of him, it served as a rolling bulwark, preventing them from attacking him at the same time. "You first," he cried, and his sword met that of the leader. The unhappy wretch was no match for the finest swordsman in all of Graustark. He made a few desperate attempts to ward off his fate, calling loudly for his comrade to come and help him. His comrade was eager enough, but Baldos's strategic roll of the cask effectively prevented him from helping. With a vicious thrust, the blade of the goat hunter tore clean through the man's chest and touched the wall behind. "That's one!" cried Baldos, gloating in the chance that had come to him. The man gasped and fell. He was none too quick in withdrawing his dripping weapon, for Baldos could see the second man had jumped the obstacle and was on him in a flash. Ooh, sword fights. It's getting good. All right. It's late, though, and I am definitely going to stop here and make myself wait and see how this sword fight ends up, and if Beverly is ever going to realize that Baldos was talking about her. I mean, even somebody as dense as me can see it, and I'm pretty dense when it comes to any of that romantic stuff. So if I can see it, I feel smarter than Beverly. Anyway, thank you as always. Let me know what you're thinking about this story, and I will see you. Oh, don't forget to hit that thumbs up button for me. It does always make me smile, and it lets me know that you kind of at least are enjoying the story. So hit that subscribe button for me, and I will see you again later.